Imagine this. You wake up one morning, the sunlight streaming through your window, the world outside buzzing with life. You stretch, yawn, and for a brief moment, everything feels perfect. But then, like a shadow creeping across the floor, a thought enters your mind. It's small at first, almost imperceptible, but it grows. It's a question, a doubt, a fear. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not good enough? Suddenly the sunlight feels harsh, the world outside feels threatening, and the day ahead feels like a minefield. You haven't even gotten out of bed, and already your choices are being dictated by something you can't quite name. Something invisible, yet all-powerful. Fear. Now, imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. Below you, the ocean roars, its waves crashing against jagged rocks. The wind whips around you, tugging at your clothes, urging you to step back. But you don't. You stand there, your heart pounding, your breath shallow, and you feel it, the pull. Not just the pull of the wind, but the pull of something deeper, something primal. It's the pull of possibility, of freedom, of life itself. You know that if you jump, you'll feel alive in a way you've never felt before. But you don't jump. You step back. And as you do, you feel something else. A sinking feeling in your chest, a whisper in your mind. You're safe now, it says. But is that true? Are you really safe? Or have you just traded one kind of danger for another? The danger of never truly living. Fear. It's the silent puppeteer, the invisible hand that guides your every move. It's the voice in your head that tells you to play it safe, to stay small, to avoid risk at all costs. It's the force that keeps you from pursuing your dreams, from speaking your truth, from being who you really are. But here's the paradox. Fear is also what keeps you alive. It's what stops you from stepping into traffic, from touching a hot stove, from jumping off that cliff. Fear is both your protector and your prison. It's the line between life and death, between safety and danger, between who you are and who you could be. But what if that line is an illusion? What if fear isn't protecting you at all? What if it's holding you back? Think about the last time you made a decision. Maybe it was a big decision, like quitting your job or ending a relationship. Maybe it was a small decision, like what to eat for breakfast or what to wear to work. Did you make that decision freely, based on what you truly wanted, or did fear play a role? Did you choose the safe option, the familiar option, the option that wouldn't rock the boat? Did you choose what you thought others expected of you, what you thought would keep you from being judged, rejected, or abandoned? If you're honest with yourself, you'll probably admit that fear had a hand in it. Maybe it was a small hand, a subtle influence, but it was there. And if fear is influencing your decisions, even in small ways, then who's really in control? You or fear? Now here's the great question. What if fear isn't just influencing your decisions? What if it's controlling them? What if every choice you make, every path you take, every word you speak, is being dictated by fear? What if the life you're living isn't the life you chose, but the life fear chose for you? And what if, by letting fear control your decisions, you're not just avoiding danger, you're avoiding life itself? This is the tension we all live with, whether we realize it or not. On one hand, fear keeps us safe. It's the voice that says, don't take risks, don't stand out, don't rock the boat. On the other hand, fear keeps us stuck. It's the voice that says, don't pursue your dreams, don't speak your truth, don't be who you really are. So, what do? Do we listen to fear and stay safe, but small, or do we ignore fear and risk everything, even our lives? Is there a third option? A way to live that honors fear's wisdom without being controlled by it. A way to make decisions that are truly our own, not dictated by fear, but guided by something deeper, something truer. This is the question we'll explore in the next section. We'll dive into the hidden problem, the psychological and philosophical roots of fear, and uncover why it has such a powerful grip on our decisions. We'll examine the forces that shape our fears, the ways they manifest in our lives, and the deeper consequences of letting fear control us. But for now, just sit with this question. What would your life look like if fear no longer controlled your decisions? What would you do? Who would you be? And what would it take to get there? The answer might surprise you, it might terrify you, but it might also set you free. Fear is not just an emotion, it's a survival mechanism. It's hardwired into our brains, a relic of our evolutionary past. When our ancestors roamed the savannah, fear kept them alive. It told them to run from predators, to avoid poisonous plants, to stay close to the tribe. Fear was a guide, a protector, a necessary tool for survival. But here's the problem. We no longer live in the savannah. The world has changed, but our brains haven't. The same fear that once kept us alive now holds us back. It's a tool that's outlived its purpose, a relic that's become a burden. To understand why fear has such a powerful grip on our decisions, we need to look deeper into the psychological and philosophical roots of fear. Let's start with psychology. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, believed that fear is rooted in the unconscious mind. He called it the shadow, the part of ourselves that we repress, deny, or ignore. The shadow is made up of all the things we're afraid of, our weaknesses, our desires, our darkest impulses. And because we're afraid of these things, we bury them deep in our unconscious, where they fester and grow. But here's the catch. The shadow doesn't go away. It lurks in the background, influencing our thoughts, our emotions, our decisions. It's the voice in your head that says, "You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. You don't deserve happiness." And the more you try to ignore it, the louder it gets. Jung believed that the only way to overcome fear is to confront the shadow, to bring it into the light, to acknowledge it, to integrate it into our conscious mind. This process, which he called shadow work, is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, and self-reflection. But the reward is freedom, freedom from the grip of fear, freedom to make decisions that are truly our own. Now, let's turn to philosophy. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher known for his radical ideas about human nature, believed that fear is rooted in our desire for security. He called it the will to power, the drive to control our environment, to eliminate uncertainty, to create a sense of order in a chaotic world. But Nietzsche also believed that this desire for security is an illusion. Life is inherently uncertain, chaotic, and unpredictable. And the more we try to control it, the more we limit ourselves. We become slaves to our own fear, trapped in a cage of our own making. Nietzsche's solution was to embrace uncertainty, to confront chaos head-on, to live dangerously. He famously said, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." This is not a call to recklessness, but a call to courage. It's a reminder that fear is not something to be avoided, but something to be faced. And when we face our fears, we grow stronger, more resilient, more alive. Arthur Schopenhauer, another German philosopher, took a different approach. He believed that fear is rooted in our desires. We fear losing what we have, and we fear not getting what we want. This constant cycle of desire and fear keeps us trapped in a state of suffering. Schopenhauer's solution was to let go of desire, to detach ourselves from the things we fear losing. This doesn't mean giving up on life, but finding peace in the present moment, free from the tyranny of fear. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, saw fear as a product of our freedom. He believed that we are condemned to be free, that we have no choice but to make choices. And this freedom is terrifying. It forces us to take responsibility for our lives, to face the consequences of our decisions, to confront the uncertainty of existence. Sartre called this anguish, the deep existential fear that comes with the realization that we are the authors of our own lives. But he also believed that this anguish is the price of freedom. To live authentically, we must embrace our freedom, even if it terrifies us. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, saw fear as a test of our humanity. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote about the horrors of the concentration camps, where fear was a constant companion. But Frankl also found meaning in the midst of suffering. He believed that even in the face of fear, we have the power to choose our response. This is what he called the last of the human freedoms. The freedom to choose our attitude, even when we cannot choose our circumstances. So what do these thinkers tell us about fear? They tell us that fear is not just an emotion, but a reflection of our deepest desires, our darkest impulses, our existential dilemmas. It's a product of our unconscious mind, our desire for security, our attachment to the things we fear losing, our freedom to choose, and our search for meaning. And because fear is so deeply rooted in our psychology and philosophy, it has a powerful grip on our decisions. It shapes our thoughts, our emotions, our actions. It keeps us stuck in patterns of behavior that limit our potential, that keep us from living fully, authentically, freely. But here's the question: if fear is so deeply rooted in our psychology and philosophy, can we ever truly break free from its grip? Or are we doomed to be controlled by fear, to live lives that are smaller, safer, less than we could be? The answer lies in the consequences of letting fear control our decisions, consequences that are often unseen but deeply felt. And that's what we'll explore in the next section. But before we move on, take a moment to reflect on this. What are the fears that control your decisions? Are they rooted in your unconscious mind, your desire for security, your attachment to the things you fear losing, your freedom to choose, or your search for meaning? And what would it take to confront those fears, to bring them into the light, to integrate them into your conscious mind? The journey won't be easy, but it's the only way to break free from the grip of fear and to reclaim control of your life. The next section will reveal the unseen consequences of letting fear control your decisions, and why breaking free is not just a choice, master of disguise, but a necessity. It doesn't always announce itself with sweaty palms, a racing heart, or a knot in your stomach. Sometimes it's subtler. It's the hesitation before you speak up in a meeting, the reluctance to pursue a passion, the quiet resignation that settles over you when you choose the safe path over the risky one. Fear doesn't always feel like fear. Sometimes it feels like practicality, like responsibility, like common sense. But make no mistake, it's still fear. And when fear controls your decisions, the consequences are far-reaching, often invisible and deeply corrosive. Let's start with the personal consequences. When fear dictates your choices, it shrinks your world, it narrows your horizons, limits your potential, and keeps you trapped in a cage of your own making. Think about the dreams you've deferred, the opportunities you've passed up, the risks you've avoided. Each time you let fear make the call, you're not just saying no to a specific choice, you're saying no to a version of yourself. You're saying no to growth, to possibility, to life itself. Over time, these small, fear-driven decisions add up. They create a life that feels safe but hollow. A life that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. A life that's not really yours, but the consequences of fear don't stop at the personal level. They ripple outward, shaping your relationships, your career, your sense of self. When fear controls your decisions, it erodes your authenticity. You become a people pleaser, a conformist, a shadow of who you really are. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay silent when you want to speak up. You go along with the crowd when you want to stand out. And the more you do this, the more you lose touch with yourself. You become a stranger in your own life, disconnected from your desires, your values, your truth. And when you're disconnected from yourself, you're disconnected from others. Your relationships become superficial, transactional, devoid of real intimacy. You're not showing up as your true self, so how can you expect others to do the same? Now let's zoom out even further. Fear doesn't just shape individual lives, it shapes societies. When fear controls the decisions of enough people, it creates a culture of conformity, of mediocrity, of stagnation. It stifles innovation, discourages dissent, and perpetuates the status quo. Think about the great movements of history: the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, the fight for LGBTQ rights. These movements were born out of courage, out of a willingness to confront fear and challenge the status quo. But for every person who stood up, there were countless others who stayed silent, who chose safety over solidarity, who let fear dictate their actions. And when fear wins, progress loses. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of fear is its effect on your mind. It shapes your perception of reality. It creates a distorted lens through which you see the world, a lens that magnifies threats. This is where cognitive biases come into play. Fear activates the negativity bias, which makes you more likely to notice and remember negative information. It triggers the confirmation bias, which makes you seek out information that confirms your fears and ignore information that contradicts them. And it fuels the availability heuristic, which makes you overestimate the likelihood of rare but frightening events. In other words, fear doesn't just make you afraid, it makes you see a world that's more frightening than it really is. This distorted perception of reality has a profound impact on your behavior. It makes you risk-averse, overly cautious, and prone to procrastination. It keeps you stuck in your comfort zone, even when your comfort zone is anything but comfortable. And it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you let fear control your decisions, the more you reinforce your fears, and the harder it becomes to break free. But here's the twist. Fear doesn't just distort your perception of reality, it distorts your perception of yourself. When fear controls your decisions, it undermines your confidence, your self-esteem, your sense of agency. It makes you doubt your abilities, second-guess your instincts, and question your worth. Over time, this erodes your sense of self. You start to see yourself as small, powerless, incapable. And when you see yourself this way, you act this way. You shrink, you hide, you play it safe. And the more you do this, the more you reinforce the belief that you're not capable of handling challenges, of taking risks, of living fully. It's a vicious cycle, one that keeps you trapped in a life that's smaller than you deserve. But the consequences of fear don't stop there. Fear also takes a toll on your mental and physical health. Chronic fear activates the body's stress response, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this can lead to a host of health problems, from anxiety and depression to heart disease and weakened immunity. Fear doesn't just limit your life, it shortens it. So what's the takeaway? When fear controls your decisions, the consequences are profound. They affect every aspect of your life, your personal growth, your relationships, your career, your health, your sense of self. They shape your perception of reality, distort your sense of agency, and keep you trapped in a cycle of avoidance and self-doubt. And they ripple outward, shaping the world around you, perpetuating a culture of conformity and stagnation. But here's the good news, you don't have to stay trapped. You don't have to let fear control your decisions. You have the power to break free, to confront your fears, to reclaim your agency, to live a life that's truly your own. The journey won't be easy, but it's worth it, because on the other side of fear is freedom. On the other side of fear is life. In the next section, we'll explore how to break free from the grip of fear. We'll look at radical shifts in perspective, counterintuitive solutions, and practical strategies for reclaiming control of your decisions. But before we move on, take a moment to reflect on this. What are the unseen consequences of fear in your life? How has fear shaped your decisions, your relationships, your sense of self, and what would it take to break free? The answers might surprise you. They might terrify you. But they might also set you free. The journey continues. The rebellion begins. And the first step is yours to take. The moment you decide to break free from fear is the moment you declare war on the invisible forces that have controlled your life. This is not a passive act. It's a rebellion. It's a radical shift in perspective, a refusal to accept the status quo, a commitment to living authentically, courageously, and fully. But how do you rebel against something as pervasive, as insidious, as deeply rooted as fear? How do you reclaim control of your decisions, your life, yourself? The answer lies in a combination of mindset shifts, practical strategies, and a willingness to confront the unknown. Let's start with the mindset shifts. The first step in breaking free from fear is to recognize that fear is not your enemy. It's not something to be eradicated, but something to be understood. Fear is a signal, a messenger, a part of you that's trying to protect you. But like an overprotective parent, it often goes too far. It sees danger where there is none, it exaggerates risks, and it keeps you from taking the very steps that would help you grow. So, instead of fighting fear, try listening to it. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to tell me? What is it trying to protect me from? When you approach fear with curiosity rather than resistance, you take away its power. You transform it from a tyrant into a teacher. The second mindset shift is to embrace uncertainty. Fear thrives on certainty, or rather, the illusion of certainty. It tells you that if you just stay in your comfort zone, if you just avoid risks, if you just play it safe, everything will be okay. But here's the truth: life is inherently uncertain. No amount of planning, no amount of caution, no amount of control can eliminate uncertainty. And the more you try to control the uncontrollable, the more you limit yourself. So, instead of seeking certainty, embrace uncertainty. See it not as a threat, but as an opportunity. Uncertainty is the space where growth happens, where creativity flourishes, where life unfolds. When you embrace uncertainty, you take away fear's favorite weapon. The third mindset shift is to redefine failure. Fear of failure is one of the most common and paralyzing fears. It keeps you from pursuing your dreams, from taking risks, from putting yourself out there. But what if failure isn't the opposite of success? What if it's a necessary part of success? Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10 ways that won't work." Every failure is a lesson, a stepping stone, a chance to learn and grow. When you redefine failure as feedback, you take away its sting. You free yourself to take risks, to experiment, to fail forward. Now, let's move on to the practical strategies. The first strategy is to take small, deliberate steps outside your comfort zone. Fear thrives on avoidance. The more you avoid what you're afraid of, the bigger and scarier it becomes. But when you take small, deliberate steps toward what you're afraid of, you chip away at its power. Start with something small, something that makes you slightly uncomfortable but isn't overwhelming. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting, saying no to a request, or trying something new. Each time you take a small step, you build confidence, resilience, and momentum. And each time you do this, you expand your comfort zone, making it easier to take bigger steps in the future. The second strategy is to practice mindfulness. Fear is often rooted in the past or the future, in regrets about what you've done or worries about what might happen. But the present moment is where life happens. When you practice mindfulness, you bring your attention back to the present moment, where fear has less power. Mindfulness doesn't eliminate fear, but it creates a space between you and your fear, a space where you can observe your fear without being consumed by it. This space is where you reclaim your agency, where you make decisions based on what's true for you, not what fear tells you. The moment you decide to break free from fear is the moment you declare war on the invisible forces that have controlled your life. This is not a passive act, it's a rebellion. It's a radical shift in perspective, a refusal to accept the status quo, a commitment to living authentically, courageously, and fully. But how do you rebel against something as pervasive, as insidious, as deeply rooted as fear? How do you reclaim control of your decisions, your life, yourself? The answer lies in a combination of mindset shifts, practical strategies, and a willingness to confront the unknown. Let's start with the mindset shifts. The first step in breaking free from fear is to recognize that fear is not your enemy. It's not something to be eradicated, but something to be understood. Fear is a signal, a messenger, a part of you that's trying to protect you. But like an overprotective parent, it often goes too far. It sees danger where there is none, it exaggerates risks, and it keeps you from taking the very steps that would help you grow. So, instead of fighting fear, try listening to it. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to tell me? What is it trying to protect me from? When you approach fear with curiosity rather than resistance, you take away its power. You transform it from a tyrant into a teacher. The second mindset shift is to embrace uncertainty. Fear thrives on certainty, or rather, the illusion of certainty. It tells you that if you just stay in your comfort zone, if you just avoid risks, if you just play it safe, everything will be okay. But here's the truth: life is inherently uncertain. No amount of planning, no amount of caution, no amount of control can eliminate uncertainty. And the more you try to control the uncontrollable, the more you limit yourself. So, instead of seeking certainty, embrace uncertainty. See it not as a threat, but as an opportunity. Uncertainty is the space where growth happens, where creativity flourishes, where life unfolds. When you embrace uncertainty, you take away fear's favorite weapon. The third mindset shift is to redefine failure. Fear of failure is one of the most common and paralyzing fears. It keeps you from pursuing your dreams, from taking risks, from putting yourself out there. But what if failure isn't the opposite of success? What if it's a necessary part of success? Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10 ways that won't work." Every failure is a lesson, a stepping stone, a chance to learn and grow. When you redefine failure as feedback, you take away its sting. You free yourself to take risks, to experiment, to fail forward. Now, let's move on to the practical strategies. The first strategy is to take small, deliberate steps outside your comfort zone. Fear thrives on avoidance. The more you avoid what you're afraid of, the bigger and scarier it becomes. But when you take small, deliberate steps toward what you're afraid of, you chip away at its power. Start with something small, something that makes you slightly uncomfortable but isn't overwhelming. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting, saying no to a request, or trying something new. Each time you take a small step, you build confidence, resilience, and momentum. And each time you do this, you expand your comfort zone, making it easier to take bigger steps in the future. The second strategy is to practice mindfulness. Fear is often rooted in the past or the future, in regrets about what you've done or worries about what might happen. But the present moment is where life happens. When you practice mindfulness, you bring your attention back to the present moment, where fear has less power. Mindfulness doesn't eliminate fear, but it creates a space between you and your fear, a space where you can observe your fear without being consumed by it. This space is where you reclaim your agency, where you make decisions based on what's true for you, not what fear tells you. In the final section, we'll explore the ultimate truth. The final, most powerful realization that redefines how you see fear, how you see yourself, and how you see life itself. But before we move on, take a moment to reflect on this. What would it take for you to break free from fear? What small step could you take today? What mindset shift could you make? What support could you seek? The journey is yours to take. The rebellion is yours to lead. The rebellion is yours to lead. And the freedom is yours to claim. The final revelation awaits. The ultimate truth is just around the corner, and it has the power to change everything. Here it is, the final, most powerful realization, the one that redefines how you see fear, how you see yourself, and how you see life itself. It's not a quick fix, a magic bullet, or a simple answer. It's a paradigm shift, a profound insight that changes everything. And it's this: fear is not the opposite of courage. Fear is the birthplace of courage. Let that sink in for a moment. Fear is not something to be avoided, conquered, or eliminated. It's something to be embraced, understood, and transformed. Fear is not the enemy, it's the raw material of growth, the catalyst for change, the spark that ignites courage. Without fear, there can be no courage. Without fear, there can be no growth. Without fear, there can be no life. This realization changes everything. It means that fear is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of humanity. It means that fear is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be honored. It means that fear is not a barrier to your dreams, but a gateway to your potential. When you see fear this way, it loses its power over you. It becomes not a force to be resisted, but a force to be harnessed. But how do you harness fear? How do you transform it from a paralyzing force into a motivating force? The answer lies in the concept of antifragility. Coined by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, antifragility is the ability to thrive in the face of uncertainty, volatility, and stress. Unlike resilience, which is the ability to withstand adversity, antifragility is the ability to grow stronger because of adversity. And fear, when approached correctly, can make you anti-fragile. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, you expand your capacity for courage. Every time you take a risk, you build resilience. Fear, when confronted, becomes the very thing that makes you stronger, braver, and more alive. It's not something to be avoided, but something to be sought. It's not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. This is the ultimate truth. Fear is not the end of the road. It's the beginning. It's the starting point of every great journey, every great achievement, every great transformation. It's the fire that forges courage, the storm that strengthens resolve, the darkness that makes the light shine brighter. When you embrace fear, you embrace life itself. But here's the catch. Embracing fear doesn't mean you'll never feel afraid. It doesn't mean you'll never doubt yourself, never hesitate, never struggle. It means you'll feel all those things, and you'll keep going anyway. It means you'll acknowledge your fear, honor it, and then take action in spite of it. It means you'll see fear not as a stop sign but as a green light, a signal that you're on the right path, that you're growing, that you're alive. This is the final, most powerful realization. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is the ally. It's the teacher, the guide, the catalyst. It's the force that pushes you to grow, to evolve, to become who you're meant to be. When you see fear this way, everything changes. Your relationship with fear changes. Your relationship with yourself changes. Your relationship with yourself changes. Your relationship with life changes. So what does this mean for you? It means that every time you feel afraid, you have a choice. You can let fear control you, or you can use fear as fuel. You can let fear shrink your world, or you can let fear expand it. You can let fear keep you stuck, or you can let fear propel you forward. The choice is yours, and when you choose to embrace fear, to harness it, to transform it, you step into your power. You become the hero of your own story, the author of your own life. You become someone who doesn't just survive fear, but thrives because of it. You become someone who doesn't just live, but lives fully, authentically, courageously. This is the ultimate truth. Fear is not the end. It's the beginning. It's the spark that ignites courage, the fire that forges strength, the storm that clears the way for the sun. When you embrace fear, you embrace life. And when you embrace life, you become unstoppable. So, take a deep breath. Feel the fear, honor it, and then take the next step, because on the other side of fear is freedom, on the other side of fear is life, and on the other side of fear is you. The real you, the brave you, the brave you, the unstoppable you. The journey doesn't end here, it's just beginning, and the first step is yours to take. Now, go, face your fears, embrace them, transform them, and live the life you were meant to live. The world is waiting for you, and so are you.